Welcome to the BeWell Network program. My name is Dr. Ted Bender. I'm a clinical psychologist and the CEO of the BeWell Network. If you or a loved one is struggling, please visit BeWellRecovery.com. My goal in this program is to educate people and to help many understand that they are not alone. There is help for the many life obstacles we endure. Today it is my great pleasure to have actor Shaun Weiss as a guest. Thank you so much for being here today, Shaun.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here with you.
So you were a child star growing up. You did tons of movies and TV shows and commercials, but most people remember you as the incredible, unstoppable goalie Goldberg in the Mighty Duck films. I know I certainly grew up watching and loving those films. And you've had many other roles throughout your career and now in your adult career as well. So I also wanted to applaud you for now being over 2 years sober.
Thank you very much. It's, of all my accomplishments, I'm probably most proud of that accomplishment.
Yeah, I agree with you because it is such a difficult thing to overcome, and it's very inspirational for other people. So you put in the work.
So.
I would love to discuss your road to sobriety and talk a little bit about, how, if you could walk us through a little bit of how you got to where you got and what change happened to get you into sobriety.
Sure. I had I met a very nice judge that helped put me on the right track. And so that's exactly what happened. I got in some trouble, and it was either go to jail or choose treatment. So luckily, the state of California gave me that option. Mm-hmm. So I felt blessed, really. And I took the drug court option. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't know what I was getting into when I, chose that option. I figured it'd be about 6 months or so, and right. I'd be back on the street running amok again. I didn't realize it was going to be almost a 3-year process. Mm-hmm. But it was very necessary, and it was what I needed because in the earliest stages of my recovery, when I had like a burning desire, it was quickly thwarted with the possibility of being locked up. Mm. So that really worked for me, that, the fear of getting locked up. So I left jail, which was an unpleasant place to be, and went directly into a residential treatment place out in Lancaster. And by that point, I was ready to get clean. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get clean. And I was living on the street.
Yeah.
I was homeless. So I didn't know what options I had. I really didn't have any options. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of state-run places that I could go to. And I tried, and I walked out a few hours after getting there. So I really was in a place where I wanted to get clean and could not. I couldn't find help. And so I went to this residential place. They scholarshiped me there, and that's where my journey really began. And to be in full disclosure, when I got into treatment, I really didn't decide I was going to be sober yet. I had a reservation in the back of my mind that I would just placate these people for as long as it took till I wasn't going to be in trouble, and then I would start using again. I really had that plan.
Yeah.
And about 50 days into the treatment, it hit me that this mindset was not going to work, and that if I carried on the way I was going to either be dead or in jail. So I decided I should get clean. And really, what worked for me, what was my hack, was the 12 steps. They didn't really put it down our throats at this 12-step place, but they made it available to us. And when I picked up the big book and read the big book, it resonated with me in a way that no other book ever had. And it felt like it was speaking directly to me, and I think a lot of people, when they read the big book, have that same feeling. And so just going through the steps, I definitely surrendered and decided to, institute this concept of a higher power. And really, what happened was I just kept praying every day, like, God, I don't know if you're there. If you're there, can you please help me by removing this obsession from me? And I just kept doing that earnestly every day for 40, 50 days. And one day, we were all sitting in the group area watching a movie, And in the movie, there was a heroin dealer, and he throws down this big bag of heroin on the table. And typically, I would see that bag, and my mind would start wondering, like, how can I do that?
Right.
And I saw the bag, and I was like kind of repulsed by it. I was like, ugh. And I noticed that, and I was like, wait a second, something just changed in me. And I literally started crying because at that moment, literally, it was different. I didn't really want to get high anymore. And that only happened through the process, which I told you. And honestly, if that seed hadn't left, I think I would have relapsed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's what leads to relapse. The treatment is very unsuccessful, unfortunately. Something like only 5% of people, right, stay clean. And I think that that's really the problem. You can be abstinent, but if you have this desire, relapse is almost inevitable.
You said so many important things. I want to try to recap.
Sorry
some of that.
for being
no,
so
it's great.
long-winded.
No, there's just really some things that the listeners, I think, need to really hear from that. One of them is the thought that consequences will keep you sober. That's something that a lot of people in early recovery think. You had already suffered some of those significant consequences, being incarcerated, being locked up. You knew that's something you did not want to go back to. And in this case, it was a motivator for you to really work the program. But even in the beginning, like you said, you decided to just placate them for a while until you could be done with drug court and move back to what you were doing. But something happened along the way, right? You said about day 50. Seems like you had a watershed moment there, too, watching that movie. But what's happening? What happened in those 50 days? And for our listeners out there, a lot. Your brain chemistry is changing significantly with periods of sobriety. So it wasn't just how you felt or what you were thinking, but your actual brain chemistry was changing over that period of time. Your dopamine and serotonin levels were returning to somewhat pre-use levels. When things were starting to level out, you were starting to think more clearly, make better decisions while you were learning the skills needed to maintain sobriety.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. And you mentioned something else too, when people go to treatment for substance use disorders, oftentimes they go to a detox residential type facility. I always teach patients that that's kind of like if you were seriously injured or you had to go to the hospital, that's kind of like the hospital piece, right? We're treating the disease. But what we're also doing is trying to prepare you for the long-term sobriety. And a lot of the real work happens when you get out of that detox res. So you mentioned AA was the support group that really helped for you. There's lots of other types of support groups out there for people who want to choose something different. The point is, you got to have that support. You got to do the work, and it's a daily activity. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, the AA community is such a supportive community for people that need that.
Yeah.
I know I have tons of friends that really lean on those meetings and rely on that heavily. And yeah, definitely, for people that aren't in AA, like if you're in the middle of an addiction right now and you don't know what to do, a great place to start is by getting the big book.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to be in AA to read that book. And I think that book is great for anyone. Like not only addicts, it's sort of a great manual on how to live.
Yes.
So, I mean, I talk about step 0 because there's 12. Like I talk about step 0 is just getting a big book and diving into that. So yeah, that's definitely a great place for someone to start.
I think a lot of our listeners, myself included, would be interested to hear how addiction crept into your life. Like we said before, you're a huge child star. You're starring in all these really big movies, and then there's a kind of a gap. When did addiction start to creep in? Was it as a result of your early success at all? Was it related in any way?
Well, I had always used substances like pot and alcohol from a really young age, probably 13 or 14. Okay. And I guess I had sort of an addictive personality, but I never used anything to a point where my life became unmanageable.
Right.
So in my late 30s, several things happened in my life at one time. So I lost my dad. I had a relationship that went south, and a combination of those things led to a very severe depression. very severe depression, like the kind where you feel like someone's sitting on your chest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so the first time I used methamphetamine when I smoked it, that pressure was instantly alleviated. And these racing thoughts that I had in my mind that I couldn't stop were gone. And so it was really a remedy for me at the time. I'm not sure what I would have done if I didn't have that remedy. It could have gotten very dark. So that was it for me. I began using those drugs as just an escape method, and it's a slippery slope with that stuff, you know. So I like to say you don't really have a drug problem until you run out of money. Like when you have money, you're just getting high.
Yeah.
When you're addicted to a drug and you run out of money, now you have a drug problem. So that happened to me, and you know, as odd as it sounds, I kind of, you know, I'd been an actor all my life, and I'm always playing parts, and I kind of fell into the role of like junkie. As crazy as that sounds, and I just kind of just started playing that role subconsciously, and next thing I knew, I was one. And you know, it just, I don't know. What really compounded things was the homelessness aspect. So I had a lease that expired, a 1-year lease, and I was staying at a friend's house, and we had an argument, and I left, and that's how easy it was.
Yeah.
I was homeless. So being homeless, if I wasn't concerned with getting that next bag of dope, I would have been concerned with finding a place to put in an application.
Right.
Or finding a room to stay at. But I didn't, because I just needed that next bag. So here you have this very brief lapse in judgment led to me being homeless and on the street for years.
So it happened in an instant, almost. Lease is up, staying with a friend, had an argument, and then before you know it, you're homeless.
I was homeless, yeah.
And
I just really didn't. It was at that point where I should have reached out to people and called people, like friends and family. But because I had just started using, it was that point where I couldn't let them see me, so I had to isolate.
Gotcha.
So in the time where I really needed help the most, and probably could have gotten it, I had people that probably would have helped me. And I couldn't even reach out to my own friends and family because I was ashamed.
And that basic human need of shelter and food, which is kind of the base level of human needs, was superseded by the drug of choice.
That's right.
Right. What was it like early on? All of a sudden you find yourself living on the streets of Los Angeles, I'm assuming?
Yeah, early on it was kind of exciting.
Yeah.
Because for the first time I really didn't have to be accountable to anyone, and I had nothing to be responsible for. So it was kind of like a rush, and I was really living the fast life, and I was hanging out with the wrong people. And at first it was kind of fun, and I was able to maintain it really until I ran out of money. I would get residual checks, and that would keep me going. But when I started, it's hard for me to say it, but when I started shoplifting to support my habit, I had given up all. I wasn't myself anymore. That who I was dead, and at one point I had such a beautiful sense of confidence, and now I was defecating behind dumpsters.
Yeah. How did you deal with the duality of that inner relationship between yourself?
I really just cut it off. I just really, that's I guess my mechanism is I block things out, and I just really didn't think about it. And it was only when people would recognize me, and because people would. That'd be very awkward. Like, hey, it's the guy from the Mighty Ducks is on aisle 11 stealing the Tide Pods again. Should we call security or ask him for an autograph? It was strange. And that was the other thing is that, while I was out there, people would be really supportive of me. Like, I had one loss prevention guy from a really popular clothing store. He would meet me outside and just give me money so I could buy dope, so I wouldn't go inside and shoplift. And he, because he was a Ducks fan.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I put my fans through. And then so the the really beautiful part about this, and I'm not trying to change the subject or anything, is the way in which my fans really saved me and helped me recover. Because early on, when I was in the jail cell and I found out that my story was on the news, I was like, oh my God, this is horrible.
Right.
And then just, people just started reaching out with so much love and support that I got to a point where I was like, how can I let these people down? Like, I can't be selfish and just get high for me. Like, I have other people to think about. And that really helped me. Shifting the mindset to, that's a huge part of the program is service, right?
Yes.
So it gave me this mechanism where I could feel like I was in some way being of service by just staying clean. And so that has helped me tremendously, the support of the fans. Without that, I definitely would not be sitting here with you.
And you're doing it again right now. I've been talking to people about this a lot, that one of the biggest problems within mental health and substance use disorders in our country is the stigma that surrounds it. If I tell you, hey, I broke my arm, you would think immediately, oh, okay, we'll just go to the doctor, get a cast, it'll heal. No problem. But when I say, hey, I've got really debilitating depression, there's this, stay away from me, something's wrong with that person, they're dangerous, right? We have this whole stigma around mental health and substance use disorders when it should be treated very similarly like a disease, like any medical condition is. But by you being here and talking so openly about your journey, that is really helping to reduce the stigma. It's not just homeless people living under a bridge that get addicted to substances. It's doctors, it's lawyers, it's television actors, it's movie actors, it's your neighborhood pharmacist, it's nurses, who I've personally worked with hundreds of nurses who suffer from debilitating addictions. It can affect anybody. It doesn't discriminate, it doesn't care who you are, and it can take you down in a second. And by you being here and talking so openly, it helps reduce that stigma. So
I thank you for saying that. I hope it does. On the subject of mental health, I had a point in residential treatment where I did have an epiphany. I was in the mirror one day, and it dawned on me that I had become insane, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a hard thing to admit. It's hard to look at yourself and admit that you're insane. And once I had that realization, then I could begin asking God to restore me to my sanity. Mm-hmm. You can't do that if you don't understand that you're not sane to begin with. Yeah. So really, that was the crux of all this, was my mental health.
Yeah.
And that's really what led to the addiction. The addiction was just a side effect of my mental health problem.
That's what I see in my clinical practice almost always. We talk about dual diagnosis. This is probably a term you've heard before. And the idea is that, most people who are suffering from a severe substance use disorder are also suffering from some sort of mental health problem. And oftentimes the mental health issue, precedes the substance use disorder. And you were mentioning debilitating depression, sounded like some anxiety as well, like the feeling of weight on your chest you mentioned. And then you mentioned that, using helped to alleviate those symptoms. And that's what so many people learn. With anxiety disorders specifically, if you're a 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-old teen, you have really terrible anxiety. You go to that party that one night and you take a drink for the first time. It's like, wow,
sure,
I can be myself. I can go talk to that girl. I can be open and outgoing. And what do they learn? I just need to drink. And then, 2 or 3, that's not enough anymore. So it's a 6-pack. And beer's not strong enough anymore. Now it's hard liquor, and the process escalates so rapidly.
Yeah, tolerance is definitely a mountain that one must climb when trying to get addicted to something, because what is that line from the song? It used to be little, but little wasn't enough. Yeah. And, that's really what it is. It's, when you're addicted, you never get enough, really.
Yeah, what is the slogan? I think it's one is too many, 1,000 is never enough.
Right.
Something like
that.
Yeah,
that's what I was trying to...
Yeah. Now that you have over 2 years of sobriety, you must have developed a lot of routines to kind of help not only keep you sober, but keep you kind of level on the day-to-day. For our listeners out there who may be struggling or wanting to learn how you did it, what are some of your day-to-day routines?
Yes, that was crucial for me, was establishing healthy habits to replace all my destructive habits. Because you got to find something to pass the time during the day, right? So Definitely some things that helped me were yoga.
Mm-hmm.
I started a practice called Isha Kriya that people can find online. It's Sadhguru.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of that guy,
No.
Sadhguru? You check him out. You're going to love him.
Okay.
So he has this yoga practice that I started. And after about 6 months of doing this practice, I began to wake up in the morning with like a joyful feeling.
Huh.
So I can't tell you the science behind it, but all I can tell you is that it worked for me. So I do this practice in the morning. I do some yoga, and then, just building healthy habits. Like I wake up and I write every day. So I have a routine that I do, and without those things, I'm kind of just I have idle time on my hands, and idle time is the devil's playground.
Yeah.
And definitely I had to go to 80 meetings because of my court order.
Yeah.
And, if people need a community, then that AA community is there waiting for them.
You still going to meetings?
I haven't been in a while just because I've been busy.
Yeah.
And, it's not the meetings. I really don't lean on the meetings and the community in that way just yet, just because I haven't had to really. But I know that if I need that support, that's there for me.
So if I hear you correctly, it sounds like you've really integrated exercise into your life, and
Definitely.
And yoga is very mindful too. So kind of being present in the moment, and you're writing. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm trying to do stand-up comedy now.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, I just opened for Russell Peters the other night. He invited me to open for him, and it was a blast.
That's
I had a
great.
great time. So I'm trying to do that. So if you see me coming to your city, come and say hello.
One thing I've always told patients that I've worked with, if I had a magic wand and I could fix 3 things walking in the door, I would say regular exercise, however you need to get it into your life, really putting focus in your quality of sleep, and
Definitely.
yeah, and eating well. Doesn't mean you're
Definitely.
a vegan tomorrow, but eating better. Those 3 things alone, I think, can make a big difference. It sounds like you've integrated some of that.
Huge, yeah. I mean, when I got to treatment, I hadn't slept in 3 years.
Right.
So just sleeping every night made me look differently. Also, if I had one other thing to say, so the 12-step program, those steps really changed my life. I would definitely advise for people a strong focus on step 11. People, like, if I lost my keys right now, I would go and I would look for them for as long as it took until I found my keys. If it took 3 hours, I would stay looking for my keys intensely for 3 hours. Do people ever go searching for God like that? Because without sounding like a nut, God is there. He wants you to find him, but you must go looking. You have to go looking with an intense search, like you're looking for your keys. And if you keep looking without giving up before you find it, I guarantee something will happen to you. Something will happen, I promise. But that's something that I feel like people kind of miss that about the 12 steps. They really get caught up in writing their pages or making their amends. And, making amends was weird for me because I found that the people that I had really wronged in my life really didn't want to hear from me.
Interesting.
They were not interested in me showing up being like, hey, sorry. They would be just happy to just not hear from me. So I just kind of set my past on fire and said, please forgive me, God, for all that.
For those of our listeners who aren't familiar with Step 11, what is Step 11?
Step 11 is really about strengthening your connection to God through prayer and meditation. And I've never met anybody that said, I spent the last year trying to strengthen my connection to God through prayer and meditation, and I just don't like it. Never heard that. So that would really be my strong advice to people. And that really is the crux of the 12 steps. The 12 steps is an instruction manual on how to have a spiritual awakening.
Right.
The last step says, after having had a spiritual awakening from doing these steps. So if you've gone through the 12 steps and you haven't had a spiritual awakening, you got to go back and do them.
That's right.
Because according to Bill, the only way to beat addiction is through a connection to God, with God.
Right.
He's the only one that can bring us out of this. So
What would you say to people who are maybe contemplating getting help or reducing their drug use, or really in those early stages of wanting to make a change, what advice would you give to them?
Well, I would say if you're in the middle of an addiction right now, you must be noticing that it's Murphy's Law for you. Anything that can go wrong is, and anything bad that can happen to you is. Things are not working out for you. I can promise you that. So being clean is the exact opposite. When you're in tune with life, good things just happen to you, you know?
Yeah.
So people who are on drugs, they know they want to be clean. It's a matter of, how do I do it? Grab yourself a big book, and life is way better on the other side, you know?
Yeah. Something else you mentioned, too, that I think is important for our viewers and our listeners to hear is there was a point where you mentioned you could have reached out for help and people would have helped you. I think as humans, we are reluctant to ask for help because we often see it as a sign of weakness, when nothing could be further from the truth. Being able to humble yourself.
Oh, that's a great point.
And reach out for help and ask for help is a sign of strength.
That is a great point. Because it's not easy to ask for help.
It is not.
And when you phrase it like that, you're absolutely right. Like, that's a hard thing to do. So that makes perfect sense, yeah.
Shaun, you were such a great guest.
It was great to be here with you,
I'm a little starstruck meeting you. Still can't believe that I'm sitting here next to you, completely honest. But your message of recovery is very inspiring, and I think that there's going to be a lot of people out there that hear you, and people will make changes based on the words that you said here today. Also, I want to talk about any projects you have upcoming, and where are we going to see you next?
Well, I'm doing stand-up comedy now.
Oh, that's great.
I think I told you, I just opened for Russell Peters the other night. It was amazing getting back on stage. I hadn't done stand-up for years.
Yeah.
It was amazing getting back up there. And I just did a picture. I have a small part in a movie called Jesus Revolution that'll be out in a few months, so look for that.
Absolutely.
And, I'm trying to be in more movies, so we'll see what happens. You can... people can get a hold of me and keep track of me at my Instagram, which is just my name, Shaun Weiss.
Thank you, Shaun, for speaking on the BeWell program today. To our listeners and viewers, please like and subscribe to our channel to stay informed. You are not alone. A better tomorrow is real. Until next time, I'm Dr. Bender. Be well.